So a couple of days ago, I was talking to one of my friends back home, and they suggested that I start a sports talk show on YouTube. I was like, "Why am I gonna do that?" He's like, "It's not gonna hurt to try. You know a lot about sports. Just go on the air and talk about it." So I thought about it, and I was like, "Well, okay. I like the challenge, I guess, and plus I like talking about sports. So what can go wrong?" So I started this show, and this will be my first episode. I'm a guy that likes to set goals for myself, and my favorite part is watching them come true. So I'm setting a goal right now. My goal is to reach 100 subscribers. And if y'all watch the show and there's things you gotta criticize. Let me know what I can do better, and I'll work on it and do better. But please try to subscribe if you like it, and if you don't like it, don't just subscribe because you feel bad. Let's go. Let's start the show. First episode up. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my show, SymeTime. I'm your host, Badam. Badam. Now, in today's episode, which is the first episode of many to come, I'm going to be talking about the NBA playoffs. Now, the playoffs started a few weeks ago, and I'm that nerdy guy that makes a damn bracket at the beginning of every NBA playoffs. So far, my bracket's been pretty right, but one team decided to mess it up, and I'll get into that later, but I can assure you I am not happy about that, and they better watch their back. Watch your back. So let's start out in the East and what went on in the first round. So between the 8-1 matchup, it was Boston versus Chicago. Now at the beginning of that series, I honestly predicted Boston was going to win it in 5. Chicago didn't give Boston any trouble during the regular season, so I wasn't expecting that to change in the first round. But it got a little surprising. The first 2 games were in Boston, obviously, because they were the 1 seed. And Chicago took it away from them. And the media was blowing up. Oh, Boston's the worst first seed ever. Oh, they suck. Oh, they didn't even deserve to be number 1. Like, whoa, hold on. It's been 2 games, y'all. It takes 4 games for a team to win the series. It's been 2 games. Why are you calling them out? I was like, I don't know what's going on here. But Boston's going to get it back. And, sure enough, Boston wins 4 in a row and they win the series in 6. Now, that could have been due to, Rondo going out after the first 2 games. But then again, both teams had things happen to them that, no one could ever predict. Isaiah Thomas's sister getting in a car crash the day before the first game. That truly impacted him. So you can't really say that, oh, this one thing made the series go this way. Boston didn't really deserve to win if Rondo played. But anyways, Boston won. Now we go to the 7-2 matchup. Now I have a question. How the hell did Cleveland get this 7 seed? I mean, they were the first seed, most of the year? And all of a sudden, at the last 5 or 10 games, they just started sucking? Now I have a prediction. I predict that Cleveland was scared of the Chicago Bulls because they've given them trouble during the regular season, so they tanked at the end so they could get the 7 seed and have a better chance of playing them. That's just my prediction. But anyways, in that series, Cleveland obviously swept the Pacers. I mean, all the Pacers have is really Paul George and then Lance Stevenson. He wasn't blowing in LeBron's ears, so that didn't affect the series. But Cleveland ended up sweeping them, and Pacers are out. And now we go to the 6-3 matchup, which was very interesting and surprising at the same time. It was the Bucks versus Toronto. Toronto was the 3rd seed. Bucks were the 6th. And the Bucks took the first game, surprisingly. But then we think, was it really surprising? Now, Toronto's been a team that's struggled in the beginning of series. In the last, 12 series they've lost like 11 of the 12 first games. So, was it really surprising? I mean, they ended up winning that series anyways, but Toronto's really got to get it together. You got to start strong if you want to finish strong. But they ended up winning. And now we go to the 5-4 matchup. The second best player in the East, in my opinion, is John Wall. So, of course I picked them to beat the Hawks. The Hawks are, Dwight Howard, he's having a back spasm, he's having this, he's having that. I mean, I feel bad for the guy. He can't control it, but that's just the reality. He's always hurt. So I wasn't really giving them much of a chance. Now, Paul Millsap is a beast. And the funny thing is, in that series, Morris and Millsap were getting into a little beef. Morris had the nerves to call Millsap a crybaby, which kind of made head news. The series was getting testy, but in the end, the Wizards prevailed and won. And so that's the wrap up of the first round of the Eastern Conference. And now we go into the West. Have you guys ever read the book All Is Quiet on the Western Front? Well, that's definitely not true for the Western Conference. All is never quiet in the Western Conference. I mean, the Western Conference has the best teams in the NBA, besides Cleveland. So in the 1A matchup, it was the Golden State Warriors versus the Portland Trailblazers. Now the Trailblazers have Damian Lillard, who I believe has been snubbed in the last 2 years for the the All-Star game. He hasn't gotten in, so I'm hoping next year he gets in because that guy deserves it. Him and CJ McCollum lit up from the 3-point line in the first game. I think they ended up with between the two of them, they ended up with 70 something of the team's point. But they ended up, of course, losing. The Warriors just took out their brooms and swept that team out of the way. I mean, the Warriors are crazy good. Even without Durant and their head coach for most of the series, they still ended up sweeping them. And my prayers goes out to Steve Kerr, hoping his back gets better because his team needs him on the sideline just as a motivator. I mean, they're already talented enough, but he started a really nice culture in Golden State. And then we go to the 7-2 matchup, which was San Antonio versus the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, the Grizzlies are grinders. I did not expect them to take the Spurs to 6 games. That was a surprise to me. But they did it. I mean, they always find a way to make it hard on the opponent, and they did that for the Spurs. But the Spurs ended up winning because, I mean, they have this crazy guy, I mean, believe it or not, called Kawhi Leonard, who's a beast. He is a beast, in my opinion. Well, I'll get into that part later. I don't want to jump to conclusion. But, he had a little help from Patty Mills. Patty Mills. Yeah, Patty Mills. Patty Mills stepped it up. He hit a couple clutch threes in the 5th game that ended up helping them win that game. And, he just steps up at times when people least expect it. And he did that in that series. And then we go to the 6-3 matchup, which, remember when I said I was going to get to this later? That series was the most interesting to me. Why? You want to know why? Because it had the 2 front runners for MVP, Russell Westbrook versus James Harden. Now, in my opinion, because this is my show, my opinion, Russell Westbrook is the MVP. Why? I mean, look at what he's surrounded by. Come on. Look, I was watching those games, and no matter how much points they were up by, when Russell Westbrook got out of the game, Houston was back in the game. If they were up by 15, Russell went down for, a 3-minute break, the game would be tied, or Houston would have it. It was just it was crazy to me, because Russell Westbrook's playing with NBA players, yet they don't look like it. He'll pass them the ball. I have no idea how he averaged a triple-double on that team. That's just how amazing he is. And that doesn't take away from what an amazing season James Harden had, but he's surrounded by a lot more. And if out of those two, if anyone's going to average a triple-double, you would have thought it would be James Harden, because he's surrounded by a crazy amount of talent. But yet Russell Westbrook still did it. That's why he's MVP. Anyways, they ended up going down. They lost 4-1 in that series. But if Russell Westbrook had a little more talent around him, they would have won. But that's why I believe he deserves the MVP, because what he did with what he had, not a lot of players in the league can do. And now we go to the 5-4 matchup. Remember when I said someone messed up my bracket? Well, yeah. It was from that series. I decided to give the Clippers the benefit of the doubt, because everyone's been saying, oh, they never make it out of this, never make it out of that. And I was like, you know what? This year, Clippers are going to do it. They're going to do it. Blake Griffin's going to step up. DeAndre Jordan, CP3, one of the best point guards in the league, ever. Ever. I ain't even joking. That guy's talented. He's good. But no, guess what? They ended up losing in 7 games to the Utah Jazz. Utah's talented. Don't get me wrong. I'm not taking that away from them. But the Clippers, come on. Come on. How do you do that to me? I mean, my bracket I would have been 100% right already. But no, guess what? I got one wrong. You know what? I need a pen. I keep a pen in my head. I'm just going to cross them out because I was wrong with that one. Look at that. This just messes up my bracket. Now I got an X in my bracket. It's because of them. So they ended up losing, and that was the only thing wrong with my bracket. But now I have a little prediction for the second round before I end this episode. In the second round, I believe that Boston is going to take the Wizards to 6 games. Boston's going to win it in 6 games. And I like to, man, Toronto, I really prayed that you could beat the Cleveland Cavs. But I know you won't because you're a disappointment. You always have been. And that team needs to also be blown up. I know everyone talks about the Clippers being blown up. And if the Clippers get blown up, please, God, please, please send Chris Paul to play with Kawhi Leonard. Just do that. But anyways, yeah, I think Cleveland's honestly going to win that series in 5 games. I wouldn't be surprised if they swept them, but I'm giving Toronto 1 game because I feel like being a nice guy, okay? I feel like being a nice guy. Take that. Adam's a nice guy. And then we go to the West. Even without their coach, I said this before, but even without the coach, I honestly believe Warriors are going to sweep the Jazz. I mean, take a look at that team. They won 73 games, and then in the offseason, they added the second best player in the NBA, Kevin Durant, to their roster. Really? I mean, the Jazz are good. The Jazz are good, don't get me wrong. They got Gordon Hayward, and who's that old man on that team that can still step it up? What's his name? Joe Johnson, yeah. Joe Johnson, he can still step it up, but he can't step it up enough to beat the Warriors. So I believe the Warriors are going to win that series in 4 games. They're going to sweep them. Warriors are going to sweep the first 2 teams they play. And then we'll see in the third round who they're facing. About that. In the third round, I believe they're going to be facing the Spurs. I mean, the Rockets did excellent in the first game. They shot 53s. 53s, I tell you. 53s. And they made about 20, which is, I mean, that's 60 points just from 3-pointers. So, yes, the Spurs lost. But the Spurs, they're one of those teams that they know what they're doing. If they mess up in a game, Pop won't hold that over their head until the next game. And so we'll see in game 2. I trust me, Houston's not going to have their way with the Spurs in the second game. And so I'm taking the Spurs in 6 games. 6 games. I give Houston 1 more win, and then the Spurs, the rest is the Spurs. They messed up in the first game, but Patty Mills is going to step it up. And then Kawhi, he's always up. He's going to step it even more up, and they're going to get that win. That's just my prediction. So in the conference final, it's going to be Celtics and Cavs, and then Warriors and Spurs. And then next time, you'll see what my prediction is for the NBA Finals. So that was my first episode. I'm new at this, so please like my show. Subscribe. Let's get this rolling. This is just the first one, first of many. SymeTime out.